Like many games, Baldur's Gate includes an in-game debugging console. It's got all the usual stuff you would expect: instant death commands, item spawners, teleportation, but there's one command in particular that sets it apart from other games I've played. If you're in debug mode, pressing Ctrl Q while hovering over any NPC will add them to your party, and I really do mean any NPC. Want to run with the biggest baddies in the game by your side? You can. Now, some of you may be wondering, what is a Nuzlocke? To put it simply, it's a restrictive rule set for playing the Pokemon series of games. The main twists being that once a Pokemon faints you can't use it again, and that you're only allowed to use the very first Pokemon that you come across in each area. You see where we're going with this, right? Yup, we'll be telling him when to scram and assembling the finest team of random NPCs this side of Kanto as we progress through the game. I hope you'll join me on this ridiculous Pokemon journey through Shadows of Arm. To kick things off, we have to establish a few ground rules about how this is going to work. No main characters. That means no Imoran, Jaheira, Minsk, etc. Even if they would join our party against our will, we'll just kick them back out. Only hostile NPCs, they have to attack us first. The main reason for this is actually this guy right over here, the godly Jailcoop Golem, who comes with an absurd strength, several attacks per round, and immunity to almost everything outside of enchanted weapons. It just happens to be the first minor NPC most people will encounter at the start of the game. If someone dies, they are dead. No revives. No bosses, static enemies, summons, or NPCs that would softlock the game. These enemies will just be ignored, and the next one will be counted as our first for the area. If multiple NPCs come on screen at the same time, we'll pick the closest one. NPCs will be given proficiency in the weapons they're holding when they join the team, and enough experience to make them their intended level. If an NPC doesn't have a class, it'll be given an appropriate one of its level when it joins. Starting our journey, we only have one place to go, and unfortunately, no matter how fast we are, a little lightning method will be able to spawn before we're able to turn off this machine, meaning our first party member is right here. Coming in at level 3, I think I'll call him Sparky. It's a shame we can't get through this room, as the very next enemy we can encounter is the much stronger Ogre Mage. We could have had all these goodies, but nope, stuck with my very own electric rat instead. I suppose at least it's appropriate. The first few battles of the tutorial dungeon are nothing to write home about. Sparky mostly hangs out at the back while our beefy hero takes things into his own hands. And just to clarify for people that may be unfamiliar with Baldur's Gate, while I've gone through several different rooms, I've not loaded into a new map. Everything we've seen so far is still the same area, so no new party members for me yet. We quickly make our way through several mini-objectives blocking our path and open up much more of the dungeon. Sparky remains pretty useless and mostly just uses his high speed to run around and keep enemies occupied while Charname bashes them into little bits. Whenever Sparky levels up, it all goes into find traps. But despite Sparky's best efforts, we are quickly outscaled by the dungeon. We're still several levels below where the game expects after all. However, it is no matter as Charname volunteers to disarm traps. The fight away.
I require assistance.
Having expertly disarmed the traps, we move on to the next floor of the dungeon. We tell Yoshimo to dance on the head of a pin and move on to the Mephit portal room. Delighted at the prospect of another Mephit party member, I quickly add them to the team. Something that I wasn't expecting, however, was that these Mephits die as soon as you close the summoning portal, and that's a good enough reason for a mulligan in my books. It's actually great news as we can get our hands on the far more interesting party member, the escaped clone. We'll call her Poser. She's a mage, and kind of actually at the right level for this part of the game. Some of the really interesting bits about this run is that the NPC characters have really out there stats. Poser has a strength of 22. She can casually carry around 800 pounds and hits basically just as hard with her fists as Charname does with his +1 greatsword. If only we could multi-class her into a fighter. If you are really desperate for another Mephit party member, you can get one by going down the other pathway, but I think we made the right decision, don't you? Unfortunately, the rest of the dungeon is all one area, so no new party members for me. Is what I thought until slightly further into the second floor when... Wait a minute. Yes, that's right. Another area that I'd forgotten about. And it has a genie. Can you get the genie to attack you? What exciting party members are just through the door, right? Yep. Oh, again? Again. We won't get too attached to this one though, as I may or may not have accidentally walked him into a trap as soon as we got to the surface. Oops.
What is my tap?
Speaking of, I think you get the picture. Nothing that exciting happens for the rest of the tutorial, and we eventually make our way outside.
You will suffer. You will all suffer. So, godchild, you have escaped. You are more resourceful than I had thought.
Right, well, I think you can find a hostile encounter in Joaquin's Promenade, but my memory was pretty fuzzy. For now, we're just going to skip on over to the slums to talk to everyone's favourite thief.
Cool! You'd be the one I'd be looking for if I'm not being mistaken.
This next chain of events worked out great. After leaving Galen's house, we make our way down to the Copper Cornet. Because we were coming from the top, when we were accosted in the street, Corvale was closer to us. And I didn't know it at the time, but he's much better than Brad.
Shut your mouth, dwarf. As for you, I said get your stinking hide out of my way!
Another one for the collection. With our new angry fighter by our side, we move into the Copper Cornet and ignore all of the usual suspects the game tries to throw at us. We end up in the back rooms fairly quickly, and to be honest, we're already at the part of the game where my memory begins to get a bit hazy. I'm pretty sure there were many potential party members here, but we end up with this guy. I'd basically written off getting my hands on a cleric, so I'm pretty stoked to have just stumbled into one completely by chance. It says he's a shaman, but it's all a lie, so we'll call him Shawat. I won't lie and say that part of me wished I'd gone the other way for the memes, but I think we got the better deal. We make our way through without issue, other than losing our second method, but a slight complication arises as I change areas, chasing after a fleeing hobgoblin.